Hi guys, welcome to Ask the Athlete. This is a new segment of the podcast, which hopefully you guys are going to really enjoy. It is me, as always, Steve Hall, and I am with Brett Freeman. Many of you may have heard of Brett. Some of you might not have. I've actually been kind of aware of Brett for a ridiculous number of years, and we've talked off air about how kind of strange it is that he had his own podcast back in the day, and I was asking questions over there, and now he's over on my own podcast, and I'm asking him questions. But without kind of going too much into that, Ask the Athlete is all about kind of getting an inside look at what some of the best competitors in bodybuilding and physique sports are doing for themselves, and Brett is one of the best. So I won't go over too much, and I'll let Brett kind of go over a little bit of your kind of competitive background. Kind of, you've done incredibly well, and yeah, I'll let you kind of touch on that.
Okay. So I first started off competing in 2009 under the guidance of Alberto Nunez. So this is way back before Instagram was the main thing nowadays. And I remember starting off training around 17 to 18 years old, going to the gym, and I remember seeing a poster up on the wall and seeing a natural bodybuilding show that was local. So I went home, got on the bodybuilding.com forums, posted a question in regards to what it takes to actually contest prep. And I remember Father Flex, aka Alberto Nunez, replying to that in a private message asking if he could pretty much take the wings of my contest prep, not knowing anything about macros, not knowing really anything about nutrition or what it takes to actually contest prep. So me and him worked for my first show. I was 18 years old. This is 2009. I competed in men's open teens and men's open bantamweights, and I placed first. Went on to lose the overall to a heavyweight. Took 2 years off season. Competed in 2011 under the guidance again of Alberto Nunez, and we competed in around 6 to 8 shows throughout the year. So it was an 8 to 10 month prep at 21 years old, which was long duration, I would say. No diet breaks. We didn't really implement any diet breaks or anything of that nature. It was just straight deficit, which looking back on it, it was a bad idea, to be honest. So 2011, I won, I want to say 4 out of the 5 shows that I did. So the men's open lightweights, but I just couldn't crack the overall. I would lose by a point or two in the overall to a middleweight or a heavyweight, who they would then go on to be really good pros. So after that, I took a pretty long off season, well, improvement season, more or less. So after 2011, I ventured into powerlifting, did okay at it, then decided to work with a few other coaches in between. Cool. I don't know if you want me to touch base on that or...
Feel free, like, if you want to go over it. That I think the listeners will be interested because
I'm trying to. A lot actually happened in between them. It was like a 5 to 6 year off season. I worked with, let me think. I worked with Tyler Mayer of TNT Nutrition, Christopher Bearcat of Competitive Breed Nutrition, Matt Jansen, who I worked with for a few months. He really changed my philosophy in regards to nutrition and training as well. I worked with Eric Helms. He more or less handled my training programming for powerlifting. Same thing with Alberto. And I think that is it for coaching wise. So I took a 5 to 7 year off season. Came back in 2017 with no intention. I had no intentions of competing, to be honest with you, but kind of winged it throughout the duration. Started mini cutting, seeing how I looked.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. 2 months out from 2017 INBF Natural Mania, decided to just, throw everything into it, compete, and I ended up winning the open men's bantamweight class and the overall for the WNBF pro card.
And that's where we are today.
That's where we are today.
That's really cool.
It's so weird.
It's obvious you had a really good initial kind of, you knew you were initially good at bodybuilding from having won shows at the get-go, which is really cool because a lot of people don't get to have that. But you also have that kind of underdog story of always kind of not quite getting the overall, which it's hard for a lightweight to get the overall, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it definitely is.
If you got to
say... And the thing is I never, one of the main things I never picked shows as a 21, 22-year-old that I could win necessarily.
Yeah.
I wanted to compete with the best of the best. So I wouldn't take I wouldn't go and compete in local shows. I would want to compete in the INBF where it's competitive and you have to win your class on top of winning the actual overall in order to receive the pro card. Yeah. I don't want to compete in a 50-person show.
No, I think that's the best route for bodybuilding, really. It's picking shows because there might not be someone better than you is not really the approach to be taking, I don't think, for most people, at least. I don't think that's as enjoyable. Something I'd love to dig into is, obviously you had like a really long improvement season. Kind of what were the biggest changes? You talked about you had some nutritional philosophies that kind of changed. What changed kind of nutrition training philosophies over that time that led to you being able to win at the WNBF?
Let me think for a minute. I would say just periodizing my training, to be honest, over the course. I mean, when I first started training all the way up till 22, 23, I had a very black and white mindset of training.
Cool.
So it was much more tailored towards powerlifting. There was no bodybuilding work. There was no 8 to 12 rep range, no 12 to 15 rep range. And looking back on it, I want to like backhand myself because it held me back so much. There was no increasing of calories strategically. It was a static, 500 carbs, 60 grams of fat, 200 grams of protein. There was no steadily increase over the course of a month to go along with training volume and intensity and etc. So what I did over the course of the 5 to 6 year off season was place more of an emphasis on nutrition and refining and smartening up my training philosophy. So implementing bodybuilding hypertrophy rep ranges. Not just going into the gym, working up to a max single on squats and calling it a day. Because that was literally, I think Mike Israel actually covered that and I took a video of it. That's how I used to train. It would literally be I would go to the gym, it'd be bench day. I would bench up to a single. Oh, I'm done.
Nice.
And that would be it. There'd be no accessory movements. There'd be no bicep work, no side delt work, no rear delt work. So that has been the main, I actually have to thank you and Mike Israel and Jared Feather for kind of opening my eyes to that. So that's been the main difference, I would say, during the past, I would say 3 years, is actually implementing smarter programming.
Okay.
So
more of a focus on kind of taking volume was obviously something key to now growing. And as we know, like as you get more advanced, it becomes more important. But you did really well to grow. And I think powerlifting is, for a lot of people, a great foundation to go from. And it obviously developed your foundation. And like movement mechanics and everything, I think that's probably helped you as well. And nutritionally, you spoke about kind of obviously the broad spectrum of periodization. Is there anything kind of specifically within that kind of, was it like strategic mini cuts, or was it kind of having specific days where you might have more calories or less calories, or was there anything in particular there?
I don't believe in rest day calories versus training day calories. I try to keep it the same throughout the week and the days, but
anything like nutritional timing? What are your general kind of looks on protein? How much you generally aim for? Do you have like a higher fat approach, lower carbohydrate approach? What's your kind of off-season, improvement season kind of looking like there? How fast you look to gain, things like that would be interesting, I think.
Well, in the past, it used to be 1 pound to 2 pounds a week, which is definitely way too fast of a rate gain. So I scaled it back, especially as you get more. I want to consider myself advanced. That's just my takeaway on that. I would say anywhere from 0.25 to half a pound a week to 2 weeks. So around a rate of gain of 1 pound a month.
Okay.
I never really implemented mini cuts. I prefer to stay 20 to 25 pounds over stage weight and just use momentum, throughout the months, and then kind of cash in when it's time to contest prep. Okay. Although I am going to be doing something a little bit different this upcoming time around due to you and Jared Feathered. I'm gonna mini cut and reassess, see where I am. Yeah. But in regards to macronutrient ratios, I've always been a higher carb person. Even when dieting, I'll obviously have to dig and suffer, quote unquote, get below sub 200 carbs. But whenever I increase food and eat into a show, carbs get upwards of 500, 600, 700 with fat intakes of 40 to 50 grams. And I compete around 145 to 150. Yeah. Protein as well. It's anywhere from 1 to 1.5 per gram. And more so on the higher end, preferably.
And when you're getting in that many carbohydrates, what are your go-to sources? Obviously, that's a shed load of carbohydrates to try and get in.
Yeah, it sucks. It absolutely. So improvement season, I obviously try to hit micronutrients, get in whole foods as much as I can, but recently it's been a lot of liquid carbs, which it sucks to say. I try to hit a minimum fiber intake. After that, though, it's just pretty much just being able to stomach and utilizing carbs that drive performance in the gym. Right. So if it makes you sluggish, if you're not utilizing the carbs efficiently, I would switch out a food source. So, for instance, Gatorade powder happens to work really well with me. White rice, cereals. I don't eat Pop-Tarts anymore, unfortunately. But I think that's one of the most overlooked things in regards to food sources in general. Right. If it's not improving gym performance, or if it's taking away from it, you should switch up what you're taking in.
Yeah, I think especially that makes sense, especially when you're eating so much of it. It kind of, if I think a lot of people, they end up doing the same with the training, with nutrition. They kind of see, squats are the best, I need to do that. But it's like, well, if you're not built for squats, potentially don't wave bye-bye to that, do a leg press or something. So it's really good that you have, and I think that's a good message for a lot of the listeners from what you're saying, in that you're continually experimenting, seeing kind of what foods are working best for you, seeing and trying different kind of periodization in terms of your nutrition, in terms of your training. In terms of kind of, obviously now you kind of set the standard, you did incredibly well in 2017, was that? Yeah.
Yes.
2017. What are you looking to build upon going forward? Are you kind of doing any specialization training cycles to bring up kind of weak points, or where are you going?
That is actually what I've been doing for the past, since getting off the world stage. That has been the main goal. Cool. It's kind of why recently my squat has kind of tanked and I haven't really been posting deadlift videos. I've been focusing primarily on the upper body since I've had decent legs since 18 years old. My minimum effective volume for legs is literally 0 sets. It's terrible.
Everyone
so bad.
hates you.
It is, no. I envy the people that have great arm insertions and upper body genetics. I could literally pound away at the upper body for months on end, and I'll maybe get a small rate of improvement, which absolutely sucks. But so I think it's been a year and a half since I last. It's been a year since I got off stage. So Then just periodizing training, increasing volume over the course of a month, deload, back to square one, and continually doing that for the past year. So prioritizing arms, so biceps, actually training, the barbell curl, dumbbell curl, actually training with skull crushers for the triceps, and training like a bodybuilder over the past year, which I believe has yielded some decent improvements for where I'm at currently.
That's really exciting, because I think if anyone doesn't believe us when like my shock at Brett's amazing legs, kind of just look up Brett's Instagram and you'll see some of kind of his side shot, even front shots, but hamstrings are some of the best I think you'll possibly ever see on a lightweight. They're just fantastic. But I think the really refreshing thing is you talked about kind of how much you struggle with your upper body, which I think, you're an excellent bodybuilder, yet you still have these weak points that potentially others might have something over you. But overall, your physique is obviously very well balanced apart from that. So it's exciting to hear about the potential that these are going to see improvements via kind of volume increases. Are you keeping your leg training basically just a small number of sets throughout the week? Yes,
I've been training legs 1 to 2 times a week, depending on where it falls throughout the week. I've tried keeping the total number of working sets under 14, I believe.
Cool.
But it's been mainly just squats and leg press, which leg press is a movement I also never did as well in the higher rep range.
Right.
So it's been very humbling, to say the least.
I think that'd be really exciting, actually, to see you kind of, become more of a, like, specificity is essentially something you've increased towards bodybuilding, which is really cool to see, actually.
That's actually something that Eric Helms tried to preach to me a few years back, but too hard-headed, honestly. That's just with age. So
and I guess letting your squat, your deadlift somewhat plateau, has that been difficult psychologically to get over? Like, I know for myself, I see some lifters who are doing like huge lifts on these lifts, and I'm like, I'd love to be doing that. And then I'm like, but Steve, keep your head on. You need to be doing this. Keep the goal. Has it been tough?
It honestly, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself to be competitive, but I am, because I know potential is there to improve. But I look at it this way. I know I can squat 500 pounds, but is that going to help me in bodybuilding? It's not going to, which sucks to say. Seeing AJ Morris is like literally it's like tearing me apart. It's like it's tearing me apart. It's like nope. Focus on the goal. Focus on the goal. Or just scrolling through Instagram and seeing people hit 500, 5 foot lifts, absurd numbers that were unheard of years ago.
Yeah.
But I know that in order to continue competing at a high level, I have to focus on what needs improvement, and that's the upper body, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think, is that something, I've personally suffered with it, I think, throughout my lifting time, but social media has got bigger and bigger. Is that something you've ever found, like you've found difficult not to get influenced by others, and you have to, I guess right now, are you coaching yourself? Is that difficult sometimes to keep your coaching hat on and not get influenced in that way?
Yes, definitely. It's kind of been this, in the form of, there's always been forums, there's always been information to gain from, but I would say during the past, I would call it like the boom of like the fitness Instagram during the past 1 to 3 years. It's just it's a massive influx of just differing views. What's better, what's more optimal. And I feel like it's hard to actually focus on one thing at a time. So if you see somebody squatting 550 and they're like, oh shit, well maybe I want to start powerlifting. Or then you see somebody utilizing bodybuilding movements and it's like, maybe I should do that. And you swing, back and forth. But in regards to my own coaching, I wouldn't say it influences it slightly. I'm a huge fan of Cliff Wilson.
Right.
John Gorman, Alberto, obviously, yourself, Mike Israel. I would say I take what I learned from them and I kind of utilize it in my own practice, see
Nice.
what works, see what doesn't work. My coaching it's a Frankenstein version of pretty much everybody else's. I've learned and worked with so many different coaches, which I feel like younger people need to do. Not necessarily work with many coaches, but I feel like they need to see what works for them. Get some ideas from, say, a Matt Jansen or a Steve Hall and see what works for them.
I think that's really refreshing, actually. The fact that you're very open about listening to other people, you've got something to learn from everyone, but you're going to be selective about what you're going to decide to do because certain things will work, or you'll trial them and see if they work for you, which I think for someone who's trying to be their best in any sport, that's something you need to continually do, whilst you're, I guess, always keeping in mind the general principles behind what you're trying to do, keeping that realm of specificity. You're not seeing a sprinter being like, I'm going to go become a sprinter now.
Yeah.
But with your hamstrings, maybe you could be a good jumper. I don't know.
I actually ran track in high school. I wasn't that good. I ran track, but I did long distance. So I'm like sitting there in practice, like warming up. I'm like, why is everybody so much taller than me? And you're in the wrong. Should be doing the 100 meter instead of the 400. I actually inquired during my prep. I asked Cliff Wilson why he sets protein intake so much higher.
Right.
Because I've always been just 1 pound per body weight.
Yeah.
He actually inspired me. Well, not inspired, but explained as to why he has his clients on a higher intake of protein. So I messed around with that. So during 2017, I was around 250 to 275 grams of protein, which was an absurd amount.
Yeah.
Because I never exceeded 180 to 200 grams. And I would honestly say that I retain more lean body mass over the course of the prep without it interfering with weight loss. Mm-hmm. So
no, that's a really interesting.
It's one thing that I picked up on over the past year.
And I guess you talked about that prep that was like just continual linear dieting, which I guess you also didn't do this time round.
Correct. Yes.
Is your approach refeeds, or how do you go about? How was that?
It was a mixture of both. I mean, it's actually funny. I can remember my first prep macros, and I can remember my second season prep macros because they didn't change that much. Which, looking back on, I mean, obviously Alberto in the 3D MJ, they've changed their ways. Which is nice to see because if you're not adapting and evolving, but for the 2017 prep, I think it was after I was talking with Brian Miner and Alberto in regards to implementing, I think it was 3 high carb days in a row, then 4 days of digging.
Cool.
I started implementing that in the beginning, and then after I was around 8 to 10 pounds out, it was 2 weekly refeeds and just 5 days of regular macros with a diet break following my second pro show leading up to Worlds. I mean, I increased caloric intake significantly. I mean, I believe I increased my carbs by 300. I was eating around 600 grams.
Wow.
About a month out from Worlds. And then I decided because I was up in the air in regards to competing with Worlds. But so throughout the course of 2017, there was a few different strategies I would say that I utilized. It wasn't just straight linear dieting. Mm-hmm. It would be a month of dieting with, 2 refeeds per week, maybe a diet break thrown in between. And then after that, maybe cut it down to 1 refeed a week with a diet break. Cool. Every 4 to 6 weeks for a few days to maybe a week at a time. Okay.
That's really cool. And then in terms of when you're going through peak week, that's something everyone loves to hear about. And I'm sure people will be interested to hear what you've kind of potentially done in the past, what you did in your last season. And I assume you coached yourself through the 2017 prep as well. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Tilapia.
That week you just pound tilapia, it thins the skin.
Tilapia, man. sauna, you gotta dry out, really, drop water. I actually had a client that wanted to, oh God, that's another story. So with peak week, I like to be ready 4 to 6 weeks out before a show. I don't like to, diet hard as hell up until the last minute of the show, because you're going to be flat. One, you're going to look bad. And then you're going to try and use a magic solution to fill out last minute, and it just does not work that way. So I like to be ready 4 to 6 weeks out, slowly increase caloric intake, fill out. In regards, so how I handled the 2017 peak week for the INBF Natural Mania, I front loaded in the past with Alberto. I decided to inquire yet again with Cliff Wilson, backload this time. So I picked his brain quite a bit in regards to how he utilizes a backloading approach, because I was really up in the air in regards to it, because I don't want to. The biggest thing, I don't like spilling over. I'd rather spill over, after the show and etc. Yeah. So I asked him his thoughts, his input. Decided to run a mock peak week, just a really quick, rapid backload. I kept it really conservative. It was around 600 to 700 grams of carbs, fat intake sub 30 or 40, protein around 150. Woke up the next day looking relatively full. Could have filled out a little bit more. That's what I did for the INBF Natural Mania. I reduced carbs starting from Monday to Thursday. So 200, 175, 150. Then would backload the night before. And I would say it's, in my opinion, very similar to front loading.
Okay.
To be honest. I wouldn't call it a quick fix per se. Maybe, I most likely could have pushed carbs higher. And for my first pro show, I did a rinse and repeat, same thing. Okay. And for Worlds, I screwed up. I would say I honestly screwed up peak week. I was going into the week with much higher carbs, but I had a softer look. Okay. Sorry for the bro terminology. And I decided to this is why, in my opinion, people need coaches. Right. Because I was totally losing my shit towards the last, final stretch of Worlds. Last 3 days, I dropped carbs down to 150, 100, completely messed up my fluid intake, my sodium and potassium intake. Did my polygraph, ended up backloading at 11 p.m. at night. Wow. Knowing I have to be on, I was a complete mess. I blame it on Boston traffic too. Don't ever drive Boston traffic. Yeah. So I ended up backloading with, 4 hours of getting in 600 to 700 grams of carbs. Wow. I woke up full, but I cramped so bad on stage. It was absolutely terrible. Yeah.
And I guess, I like the 4 to 6 weeks out being ready early. I think that's, as you get more competitive and you have more of an understanding of how long it takes you to get ready and things like this, you have better ability of doing that. And then your approaches to peak week, it sounds like you probably keep your sodium and your electrolytes pretty much level and water kind of a bit level, and you're more so modulating carbohydrates.
Yes, correct.
Cool.
Yes.
Awesome. No, really cool. And then in terms of post competition, what's your approach there? Are you kind of reversing out recovery diet, or do you have your own kind of spin on things?
It used to be reverse dieting very anally, to be honest, to the point that you would, come down with an eating disorder post show, and it's I'm slowly adding 5 grams of carbs every single week, and this is getting me nowhere. So this past competition season, I decided to, one of the main things, I have to give my girlfriend props for this, is she removed the scale, the food scale, which helped so much. At first psychologically it was it was a mind. It was a mind fuck at first. I'm like, I can't weigh this whey protein powder, but it helped, honestly. So out the gates, the goal was to gain roughly 5 pounds the first week, maybe a pound after, be up 10 to 12 pounds.
Cool.
Within the first month, which is a bit much to some, but I mean, you factor in water weight and glycogen stores increasing. It isn't that much. Whereas I don't think staying lean post show is a good thing, because in the past I've done that and it does more harm than good. So it's more of a recovery diet, I would say, post show. And then after that, I would keep the rate of gain to 0.25 to half a pound a week. Slowly increase caloric intake, get back to a healthy body fat percentage set point.
Yeah.
I think the main thing post show, I feel like with a lot of competitive athletes is having a healthy relationship with food, because most don't, I would say. I mean, you see time and time again, people blow up 30 pounds after their first show, then they want a mini cut afterwards, and then they want to bulk, and then they end up mini cutting 3 times 3 months post show, and it's, 2 steps forward, 5 steps back almost.
So you found that kind of the recovery approach, did you find that easier to adhere to, and you just felt much better sooner?
Yes, definitely. I mean, obviously it's weird seeing things fade away, but you have to remind yourself that, I mean, I tell this to my clients all the time. It's like, you're not going to be stage lean year round. And in order to improve, like, you have to put body fat on, and you have to see the scales slowly, incrementally increase. It's hard to do, but it's like easy to say almost.
Yeah. And I think, well, for me at least, once those initial pounds are on, it kind of gets easier to accept. It's like, it's gone now, and I prefer feeling energetic.
Exactly. I mean, there's a big difference between intaking 200 grams of carbs versus 500 grams of carbs and being able to sleep again. That was like the only issue throughout prep, honestly. It was sleep, which
still need to work on, apparently.
Still need to work on it, yeah.
In terms of your off season, how far do you have like a cap in terms of how far you'll let your stage weight go above stage weight rather?
I usually never get above 170, 175. I mean, in the past, I've dreamer bulked and pushed it like really, really, really high. I mean, 175, 180, but like super bloated. I just ate a huge buffet and weighed myself. No, look at me, I'm 175. This off season, actually, I decided during the past month to 2 months to kind of push my scale weight up, just to kind of eke out more improvements before setting myself up for the upcoming future. Yeah. So I would recommend. I wouldn't recommend any. It really depends on height and weight, to be honest, as well. I'm 5'6", I believe, so I try not to get anywhere above 25 pounds over stage weight.
Cool.
Because of that, you're just like, you're shooting yourself in the foot, having to mini cut, maintenance phase, and then continue dieting. So anywhere from, I would say, 20 to 30 pounds over stage weight, depending on height. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And then in terms of like future, what's the goal? Have you got like an idea of when you want to compete, or have you just kind of like when you see improvements enough where you're like, actually, I could look different next time I get up on stage?
So unfortunately with the WNBF, you have to compete every 2 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't actually realize that.
I don't believe you have to, because I mean, Brian Whitaker has taken an extended off season as well as other WNBF athletes, but they typically want you to compete every 2 years, which is not optimal, I would say. But you don't, I mean, a lot of WNBF pros do relatively well every 1 to 2 years.
Right.
I mean, Brian Whitaker won back-to-back world titles. He would, diet for 6 to 8 months, compete off season for 6 months, come back with moderate improvements too, which was amazing to see.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, what an athlete should do is, until they see actual visible progress in their physique, they shouldn't compete again. And I don't necessarily believe in long extended off seasons, but at least 1 to 2 years worth post your last show. Mm-hmm. For myself, I know that if I don't continue competing, I'm probably never going to compete again. So, right. And I also have another goal in mind that I would like to accomplish. It's so weird saying this because I still haven't reflected on Worlds yet.
Right.
Which that could be another topic, I guess. I don't feel like I won anything per se, but that's just where I am. But for the upcoming season for myself, I'm going to be competing this year.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, cat's out the bag. For the first time, saying that out loud. Yeah, everything's talked it over with the girlfriend.
That's the boss.
That is the boss. It's like, should I? And also the other thing, which brings me back to the competing every 2 years. The WNBF used to have the rule of if you placed, I think it was top 1 to 3 in your class on the world stage, you wouldn't have to do a qualifier. So you'd be able to go back. You'd be able to go back to Worlds and just compete as Worlds as your only choice. Brian Whitaker did that year to year to year. I ended up contacting the promoter, and they're changing the rules this year. So if you didn't place top 3 overall, you I think it's overall, or if you didn't win the actual overall show, you have to do a qualifier in order to compete at Worlds. So I will be doing a qualifier prior to, and hopefully, fingers crossed, with all the freaks that are out there, I placed top 10.
No, that's super exciting. At least now, everyone who's listening to this is going to be wanting to follow your kind of. Are you going to be documenting it? Are you doing kind of Instagram, or how are you going to go about that? When are you releasing it? I mean, this is going to be released.
This is going to be it. This is going to be how it's going to be released, I guess. I was debating on posting about it, but I don't like saying anything unless it's actually set in stone. Yeah. But I've discussed things with the girlfriend, and she okayed it. Yeah. But I think you're the first person I've actually told outside of her that I'm going to be actually competing. Yeah.
And are you going to be self-prepped for that as well?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's the goal. Awesome. Depending.
As long as you keep your mind in check.
Yeah. I mean, I'm good up until a month out. And then it's all mind games.
I think everyone listens to that.
That's just how it is.
Yeah. Awesome. I think the last thing I'd love to close on is the biggest tip to kind of new competitors. If there's any kind of one big tip, something you wish you knew before you started competing, what would that be?
Focus and master the basics. And keep the goal. Perfect. Honestly. Yeah.
And Brett, I just want to say a massive thank you for you coming on the show. I think the listeners are going to have really enjoyed this. You may now be inundated with a load of messages or something over on Instagram. But if people do want to reach out to you, I've kind of mentioned Instagram. Where's the best place to get hold of you?
I would say Instagram, honestly. I'm on Facebook, but I really don't. Yeah. I don't post on social media that much. I'm a bit of a not anti-social, but I just don't partake in.
So they're gonna have to slide into the old DMs.
slide into them DMs. Send nudes. I'm just kidding.
Just so people know, what's your Instagram handle?
Baftub. BAFTUB.
And I'll make sure that's linked below so people can access it immediately. So yeah, thank you very much, Brett. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.